Are you a leader navigating burnout, doubt, or growth? Welcome to the Ripple Effect Leadership Podcast, where intentional leadership creates lasting impact. Hi, I'm Jen Brown with my co-host Hugo Rodriguez, and we're diving into real leadership stories and practical insights to help you lead with clarity, courage, and connection. Because we believe great leadership creates positive ripples at work and in life.
Hello to our listeners and viewers. I'm Jen Brown, a leadership coach and founder of Journey of Grace Coaching and a former U.S. diplomat of over 23 years, where I had the pleasure and honor of serving with my good friend and colleague, Hugo Rodriguez. Hugo, over to you.
Good morning, Jen. So great to be with you again. As Jen said, my name is Hugo Rodriguez. I am an executive leadership coach and a professor of practice in leadership. Like Jen, I am a retired diplomat, and I spent 25 years helping foreign service officers develop the skills to lead in high functioning teams in some of the world's most challenging places. And Jen, what are we going to talk about today?
We are talking about, and I'm going to put this in air quotes here for those who aren't watching, failure, and how quote failure aligns with quote success. So Hugo, you and I have chatted a fair bit about this topic, if you will, and it's a pretty emotional and personal one, I think, for both of us. And if I can just say, I started really thinking about this a lot more over the last few months. As you know, I'm a John Maxwell leadership coach. He's a leadership guru with over 90 books. In fact, his latest book, How to Get a Return on Failure, came out in April. And I got to see him talk about failure and the importance of failure. And it really has been weighing on my heart just in terms, how do we define failure and what do we do when we quote fail? And before we get into any of that, I think it's really important for us to get some of our personal definitions out there, because I think the word failure for both of us strikes kind of that emotional chord. Yeah, I see your face, Hugo.
I think it's going to be dueling books, because I have my Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy here. And this is my favorite leadership book. So it really changed the way I think, especially around failure and success and winning and losing. And so I have been in a process of evolution around the term failure and around how I define that. So for me, one of the things that Jim says in the book is that failure is really an opportunity for growth and not like something to dwell on. The other thing that has really changed my thinking is, in the sense of competition, sometimes losing is actually winning. Sometimes you go out on the playing field and you lose the game, but learn a new skill, and in that sense win, right?
Yes.
And he says that what if, the only way you're going to learn that new skill is by losing the match, and I think that's so critical in the way I think about life. And so over the past year, and maybe even a little bit more, I've really developed an allergy to the word failure. To me, anytime one of my clients brings up the word failure, I have to stop them and ask them to take a look at that experience and really decipher, was it a failure? Where's the win in that experience?
Yeah.
And so Jen, when she floated to having a podcast discussion around failure, she sent me a calendar invite, and it's been on my calendar, and it says failure. and it's holding a spot on my calendar. And every time I'd see that, I'd be like, oh no, there's been a failure somewhere. There's been a failure. And really, like the biggest failures in my life have revealed the largest opportunities for growth. And
Yes.
when I've started to just when I feel like something didn't go the way I planned it, I now stop and say, why? What can I learn? And in what ways was it a win? Was it a success? Was it an opportunity for growth? So that's I'm both allergic to the term failure and how I currently feel I define it. Tell me about you.
Oh, Hugo, first, let me just say that calendar invite, it also gave me that reaction. And I did kind of do this intentionally because it's so uncomfortable. I wanted to sit with that discomfort before talking about this today. Uh, so a few things that you said, I believe Maxwell also agrees in that sense of failure is the learning opportunity. And it goes hand in hand with any quote success, any quote wins that we have, because when we use, and I'll say failure, but really the term for me is learning opportunities. When we use those opportunities to reflect on what am I taking away from this, then that means we get better and we grow. So failure and success are just hand in hand in life. I think some of the biggest things for me over the years, I have gotten much better about seeing those learning opportunities and getting to those places a lot faster. Earlier in my leadership journey, I did have failure define me as a person. And that place was a really hard place to be in. Instead of seeing the the failure as a what instead of taking it so personally. And so I think there was some emotional maturity that came in my leadership journey to be able to separate that. And then the other big thing, and Maxwell talks about this too, but when and you talked about this right now, you got to play the game and learn, right? But backing that up even a step further is the courage to get on the field and play. At one point, I was pretty paralyzed from the fear of failure that I didn't even want to play the game, much less go out there and then fail, right? So, one of my favorite Teddy Roosevelt quotes is getting down into the arena and daring to be great in that sense. So I start to see it as step one for me is recognizing I got to show up. And then it's all opportunity. Whether I quote win or quote lose, I am winning because I'm showing up.
So true. That's exactly the way to think about these things. It's all winning. It's all winning. Because if you go in there and win, you win. If you go in there and lose, you win. Like it's all winning. I love it. The other thing I think that we need to bracket here is like the definition of failure versus winning is all in your head, right? It is all in the way you approach it, the way you own it or don't own it. And I have found, like, if someone tells me, oh man, I guess that's a fail, I think, well, I think of this quote from the Big Lebowski. Well, it's just like your opinion, man. I mean, it's just like your opinion. Winning and losing are subjective opinion. They're not. It's not an objective thing, and you get to define what is winning and what is losing.
So, Hugo, you were sharing with me the story about this race that you've been doing and this notion of I'm in fourth place, keep going.
Yeah, sort of. So, yeah, I have been happily in a place where I'm able to train I'm training again for triathlon, and I'm able to compete. I'm doing sprint tries this spring, and I've stacked up a few races to kind of see how the training is going. And the races have been going great. And the interesting lesson that I learned this weekend is not that I didn't know it before, but I got a really good view of it. I'm the only one that can define winning and losing in a race. And so the thing I was telling you about earlier was that I was, putting together my race. I was in it. The swim leg felt successful to me in terms of like my own ability to get into my swim zone and to get my breathing where I wanted it to be, get my stroke rate where I wanted it to be. Came out, transitioned in what I felt like was a fairly quick transition, although there's always room for growth there. And then I'm on the bike. And I'm riding the bike. I had a really rocky start on the bike. I had trouble getting my feet into the shoes and getting the rhythm going, but then it started to click. And I pushed my heart rate up. I was operating at a fairly high level, and I saw somebody ahead of me that was struggling a little bit. I was able to catch up to him. And as I passed him, he said, "Go, man, you're in fourth place now." And two things occurred to me simultaneously. The first one is I had a feeling there were more than four people in front of me, but really that wasn't the important thing. The important thing was the thought that occurred to me was whether I'm in fourth or 40th, I am delivering like the results that I need to deliver. It did like where I was stacked in the field just didn't matter as much as is my physical output in the zone I needed to be to have what I would define it as a successful bike race, bike leg, right? Yeah. And it was. And there, in the course of that, going back and forth, there were people that I could measure myself against. There was another rider who passed me, I passed him, he passed me, and but I found that comparison with that other cyclist to be completely unhelpful, because there's no way to tell if he's half my age or twice my age, if he is a professional cyclist or first-time triathlete. Like, I don't know anything about him.
Yeah.
Only one I know about is me. And so for me, I'm really out there just racing myself. And that was the second thought that I had. The first one is, I don't know whether, in fact, there are 5 guys in front of me or 25. The second thought almost immediately after that is, like, I'm really only competing with myself. And I get to decide whether this is an effort that I'm proud of or an effort that I am feels is lacking. There you go.
I love that. And this reminds me of a quote that I heard last year at the Global Leadership Summit, that I can't compare my beginning to somebody else's middle or further staged advancement, right? Like, we're not on the same journey necessarily. That's and right. So when we are comparing failure or success to someone else, we're not in the same starting place, even if we line up at the same starting line.
And this is why, for me, those terms are so unhelpful. And another thing you and I have talked about is I feel like as a parent, I've done my children the disservice of like reinforcing for them that the world is pass fail, like the world is about failure or success, without the context of really you're only competing with your own abilities. And in fact, not competing. Life is just the journey of improving and identifying the things that you want to do better, that you need to do better, that are areas that you can grow in. And then you compare yourself to where you were yesterday. And ideally, that is a motivator for you. Although, again, like, all that matters to me is how am I doing today? Yeah. Like, the comparison can be unhelpful because yesterday may have been sunny and today rainy, right? So how am I doing in the context of now?
But again, that goes back to this notion of, am I showing up in the arena? Am I willing to get on the ball field? am I making a choice to grow and learn every day? And I think this, and I share this about my son, and I think about this a lot. In fact, he's going through some things right now, and I'm choosing really to lean into the learning opportunity that comes with it. How do you grow from the experience? And I think, I too before was in that sort of push yourself kind of mode. And that's what I learned. And, so of course that's how I parent, until I know better and until I grow.
Can I
And
share an interesting example from my work last week? One of the classes I teach here is around leadership. And obviously, I've got a mix of students from 18-year-old to 22-year-old. And there's a big difference there. When you come into college, you're very different than when you leave college. But still, they are all very focused on grades because that's what we teach them from a very young age. Like life is about, you're going to get graded.
yeah,
And you have to perform in order to get the better grades and blah, blah, blah. At this point in my class, I am so like, it is not about the grades. Maybe that's because leadership is really about the journey and not about the destination. But
yes,
I had a student come to me this week because he didn't put the work in on a project that is extended over the second half of the course. He finds himself now knowing that grade is going to go in. He hasn't done the work. He came and said, could I do something? Could I do an alternative project to make up for not doing this developmental project over the second course of the semester? And I said, why do you want to do that? And he said, well, I feel like I've let you down, I've let myself down, and I want to do something so I don't feel like I let you down.
mm,
That's great that I have that leverage on him, but that's not the point of the class. The point of the class was about developing over time, identifying something that you needed to work on and working on it, building a new talent, a new skill, using a coach to get you there. It's something that you can only do over, months with repeated effort. So there's no paper that he can write or assignment test he can take. None of that is really replacing what I asked, what I hoped he would get out of the assignment. And it really, again, it's not about the grade. So for better or worse, I said, here's what I wanted you to get out of that assignment. Don't worry about the grade because that's not what this is about. I would like you to come back to me with an alternative for how you're going to get something from this experience similar to what you would have gotten had you done the assignment as I asked for it. It kind of blew his mind because we went from a framework of grading and someone else's opinion.
yes,
Right. He wanted to do this because he didn't want to let me down. And it was this external opinion he was fighting for and the grade. Two, it's about skills development. It is about your growth. So think about how you want to grow and how you're going to build something that will allow you to grow. And I'm not sure what's going to happen here. I mean, this poor guy, like, this is maybe the first time a professor's ever told him that that's the objective. Now go and figure something out. But again, success versus failure, winning versus losing, life is really, you're only racing yourself. And it's only about getting better with every opportunity.
yes. And we had the conversation, we've spoken before about this part too, right? When you are in your job or owning your own business and there are set requirements expected to be able to get to that next level, or known that here's the mission objective, here's where I need to get to for the mission. So that's a definition of success. And, it goes back to one of the best leadership principles of start with the end in mind, right? Be clear about what that mission looks like. And that is external. And then there's the internal piece that comes with it, because we can do the minimum amount to get to that expected desired result. When we add the internal piece, though, we are exceeding expectations. And that's where the internal race, the internal definition of success starts to come into place.
Real quick so that we have some
Yeah.
clear space to work with. So the first one is they're both really important, but I would say that to take the first one, when you step into a job and your boss says, this is what I'm going to grade you on, right? Here's why I hired you to do this. Here's what I would like to see you do, right? You clearly have a success failure framework there, right? Like if you're going to deliver the results that your boss asked for, you're going to get a passing grade. If you fail to do that, you're going to get a failing grade. That's your mindset going in, right? Whether that's a project or a mission.
Yes, and let's flip that a little bit, or let's expand on that a little bit. If you are the business owner, if you are the leader setting those expectations, are you clear in what you're setting so that people know what success quote looks like?
You tripped me there with just a single thing. Do people know what success looks like? I think you mean, do you know what success looks like as the business owner or the employee?
Both, right?
Right.
You have to define that.
Right. Again, I'm really careful around other people's definition of my success. Like I have to understand how I live in relationship to that. Right. So if my boss says, these are my expectations for your performance, now I have an external grader involved, right? The first thing I'm going to do is look at those and have a conversation with my boss around I can do this and I will deliver these results, or this is beyond my ability, or it's outside of my values, or whatever, and I choose not to step into that particular arena. And you have to be clear with yourself. When someone says, this is your job, these are the parameters, is this going to be something you want to challenge yourself to do? Because if you're setting yourself up for quote unquote failure, what's the purpose there? Like there have been assignments that I have taken that I knew would require me to grow, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so there's a huge asterisk on that assignment. Like, in order to get to the end of this, I will probably trip and fall and have to get up and go again and trip and fall. And I will make mistakes and I will, in some people's eyes, fail, but not in mine, right? Because I understand that I am on a journey that will require me to grow. So I think that at the beginning of those situations where there is some sort of external validation, you need to be really honest with yourself. Is this something I can take on, that I want to take on, that aligns for me? All of those things. And I think, my clients sometimes find themselves in a work situation where their values don't align or their skills don't align, and the growth is going to be ferocious there, right? Like they are going to have to really confront some serious challenges. And they need to figure, is this the right place to be? Come up with a strategy, all of those things. But there are times when there is that external validation thing. When you are a small business owner, I hope that before you get into this small business, you are thinking, are all those alignment issues, are all those challenge issues, are they within what I want for myself, right?
Yeah.
If you choose an entrepreneurial opportunity, they're all really growth opportunities, right?
There are lots of learning opportunities.
Right. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You're going to get into this thing and you're going to have to hustle. You're going to learn new skills. You are going to, quote unquote, fail. You are going to deliver less than you hoped at the outset.
Absolutely.
But you have to have the energy to go into it knowing this is what I'm signed up for. And I think, again, failure is such a bad way to think about it, because failure is so binary, failure is so heavy that when you in your head say I have failed, that's a huge lift. Like, you have to shoulder that, let that term go, and just be like, wow, I learned something there, right? Like, that was a challenge that I came up short on and learned a whole bunch.
So, and that's why for me, learning opportunity is such a powerful way to reframe failure, because it is all about the growth of learning and being intentional when you're going into that. So, Hugo, I love when you said, like, okay, I'm going into the job, or I'm going into creating the business, or whatever the opportunity is, the academic, environment. Here's what I understand is required externally. And then internally, what are my values that are going to help me grow when it's hard? Because it's going to be hard. So anticipating to the best of our abilities where those particular challenges may show up, where we need that extra fortitude and resilience, where we need our values to really be the fuel under us to help us not take the misses in a bad way, right? Not personally, but as opportunities to continue going.
That's such, if there's any one line for a discussion around failure, it is that. It is that when you feel that you missed the mark,
Yeah.
or you failed, or you came up short, reframing that as quickly as you can in terms of, but where was the success in this? What
Right.
did I learn? How will I do it differently next time? Like, that pivot is so powerful. If you dwell on the failure and you load yourself down with that, it's much, much harder to pick yourself up and dust yourself off. If you immediately say, woo, that was a good learning opportunity. What did I learn from that? Right.
Right.
You're back at it. And especially for entrepreneurs, I think that is because the path to entrepreneurial success is basically one pothole after another, and you're going to step in them all. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And your ability to quickly dust yourself off and get on to the next one, pocketing a lesson, that's like
Yeah.
picking up money along the road, right? As you learn, you get better and stronger and faster and all of those things. But if you just get stuck in the pothole, if you get stuck in that with that heavy weight of failure around your neck, you're going to need to talk to a coach.
Well, but I think in both cases, a coach can be super helpful to help get you there.
Yeah.
But I think that's also why what I love about the John book is how to get a return on failure, because as he says, right, you have ways to capitalize on that failure, and you have ways to let it be just a missed opportunity. And Hugo, what you just said is the faster you learn from that and you can pick yourself up and dust it off and keep going, that's when you're capitalizing. How many times have some of the greatest athletes, some of the greatest business owners, entrepreneurs, quote, successful people said, man, it took me 1,000 shots before I finally made that score, or it took me X number of, attempts at refining this business idea before it finally took off. The whole key is picking yourself up, not taking it personally, learning, and to keep going with the adjustments from what you've learned. And, when I think about this, there's an element in here of what values are important to you that will get you there. Because if learning is not important, if resilience is not important, if your purpose is not clear, then those things are much harder to do. So I'm curious, Hugo, from your experience, what's one of the greatest learning opportunities that really shaped who you are?
Oh,
You didn't know I was asking that question.
you didn't. I mean, I look back on my career, And by learning opportunities, you really meant failures, right? Like, well, like you just didn't want to freak me
Learning
out. You didn't want
opportunities, how I
to.
define this.
Right, right. Like I said, if I did, my biggest growth jumps were around these fails and ahas that happen with them. But to be honest, I mess something up every day. I mess multiple things up every day, but
Yeah.
I don't think of them as failures. I just like, it's like, oh, I'm not going to touch that thing again. That was hot, right? And that's not a failure. That's a learning opportunity. But I had big ones, right? Let's give you a couple, um, early in my career, I had the opportunity uh, to make a pitch to. I'm going to try to make this as universally useful as I can, less foreign service centric. But I was seeking a job as a staffer close to a high level executive, and that executive gave me, through her generosity, a big chunk of time. Like, I can't even imagine, going back in my mind, how she found time on her schedule to allow me to come in and pitch her why she should give me this staff job working on her team. And I pitched all the reasons and pitched them again and pitched them again and walked out of there and expecting I nailed it and got the job. For one thing, boy, I was so captivating. She gave me a whole hour of her time to talk about it. And then as we got closer and closer to the date of the announcement, I reached out to just confirm that I was a shoo-in for that role. And the person who was actually in charge of hiring said, "No, you're not even on the short list." And I was like, "What?" And what had actually happened in that meeting, while I was so busy talking and talking and talking, was that this wonderful human being, this exec who gave me so much of her time, was also giving me wisdom and explaining that I didn't have the qualifications for that job. But I was so busy on transmit and not on receive that I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
And that was I didn't get that job. And then I compounded the error by taking a job in a rival organization at the same high level. And that happened to be directly contrary to the really good advice that she had given me, which was, hey, I can't give you this job. You don't have the qualifications, but if you take this other job, you'll build the qualifications, and then I'd love to have you on my team. I didn't hear that because I was so busy talking. And then when I took a job elsewhere, she said, she thought to herself, I imagine, we've never really had this conversation, I gave him good advice. He chose to ignore it and go elsewhere. And that sent her a message about who I was. So I had to learn from that, right? Years later, she forgave me and welcomed me back onto her team. But the truth was, I was such a talker. I needed to learn to be a better listener and be more curious. Thankfully, that happened very early in my career, and I was able to enjoy the fruits of that lesson for 20 plus years. But again, like that, I could give you a dozen like big aha moments, big opportunities that I learned from failure. And I could give you ones from today and from yesterday and from the day before that are just small ones. How about you? You have any to share?
Oh yeah, like you, they happen every day. And it's, just a question of how do I choose to view them? I think over the course of my career in the State Department, lots of learning opportunities. And the big thing that stands out as the overarching theme is ownership, admitting to myself and to others when I missed the mark. No blame, right? Well, there was early in my career, there was a lot of self-blame that I carried. But learning to let that go for the sake of the learning nugget became very powerful for me. Being able to say, I missed it. here's where we are. Here's the recommendation on how to recover from this, adapt, and keep going. And I remember admitting that to a pretty senior official one time when I was new in a job that felt way over my head. And the grace he showed me was really powerful, and became such a supporter. And I, because as what he said is, you came in here and you owned it and you have a plan, and I'm behind you. What can I do to help you? And I just realized that when, we make mistakes, and we own it, it's much easier to ask for that help at that point. Um, so that was a really powerful thing for me. And I think about where I am now, and quote, working on my own in that sense, right? I don't have necessarily someone else to admit mistakes to. So I admit them to myself and to those closest to me as my supporters. And really just the same theme is there, not blaming, but leaning into grace. And how do I want to take this experience and reframe where I'm going from here?
I had a student who came into class. He was a little bit late because he'd been in some sort of competition, I think it might have been a pitch competition for like a rocket pitch or something like that, business opportunity. And he came into class, and I said, "So how'd it go?" And he said something like, "Oh, they picked the other guy because he was, better dressed or something."
Mm.
And my immediate thought was, wow, that is really not owning your own power here, right? Like
Right.
if you come out of that experience thinking that you did not succeed because of external elements, you have
Yeah.
lost all win there. Like you will not ever improve if you blame others for you not successfully surmounting that challenge, whatever it happened to be. And one of the things we always talk about as a key trait for great leaders is humility.
Yes.
Right? And humility unlocks all of this learning, all of the goodness that's back here behind the door, right? If that guy had come in and his mindset was, yeah, I came up short because I didn't prepare enough. I didn't anticipate that this would be a question they'd ask me. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. He's just given himself all the treasure that humility brings, that he can now take and improve the next time he goes to do one of these things. If he did what he did, basically come in and say, external factors prevented me from succeeding, close that treasure chest, locked it up, and threw it away. It just doesn't get any of that goodness out of it.
No, it's so true. And I know this is a hard mindset to adopt, but in some ways, and I hear this from my other coaches around me, the question becomes, how can I fail today? Because I then get to learn and grow and be better. And so embracing, quote, failure as that key toward where you want to get to. I'm not saying success, but toward your destination, toward as a pivotal part of your journey.
Yeah, I'm going to reframe that because again, the word gives me hives now. Like seeking fail. How can I fail? Is I think actually that's a Charlie Munger. You know who Charlie Munger is?
Yes, yes.
So I think that is the heart of his inversion trick, which is if I think about things in terms of how I can fail at them, I will ultimately succeed. It's easier than setting high goals and trying to attain them, setting the failure line and then getting over it, right? But I look at it more like what risks can I take? How can I be fearless?
Yes.
Right? Like how can I try something that that is outside my comfort zone?
Yeah.
That is that mindset for me, right? Yeah. Failure's involved in there potentially, but it just seeking to fail seems somehow antithetical to being human. But being a fearless risk taker seems superhuman, right? Like that's what I want to do. I want to be willing for my reach to exceed my grasp. I want to go for it. And I'm not going to worry about whether I fall short because there is greatness in that as well.
I love that you reframed it that way because that's actually the mindset I'm in, right? It's not like, let me do the bare minimum and fail.
Yes,
It
exactly.
let me be outside of my comfort zone. And I used to have one of those, I can't think of it. It was this kind of awesome circle. It wasn't a Venn diagram, I don't think, but it was, when I'm in that discomfort, that place of discomfort, that is where the magic happens. That is often where the failure happens, if you will. But reframing it, that's where the learning happens. And I can't get to magic if I'm not learning.
I totally agree. That is a powerful, powerful mindset. I mentioned the Jim Murphy inner excellence mindset of what if the only way to grow and ultimately succeed is to fail en route? I don't think that's a what if. I think it is a yes, it must be. The
Yes.
pathway to growth is invariably through mistakes, right?
Yeah.
The Stoics say, the obstacle is the way. The only way you grow is by challenging yourself, being a risk taker, being fearless, messing it up,
Yeah.
taking the lessons from that and getting to the next one. The other thing that Jim Murphy says is, I think, is a really great mindset and changed my mind about things. And it relates to the Teddy Roosevelt quote about getting into the arena. Your competitors are your partners in the dance, right? So
Love it.
another way that the obstacle is the way is that your opponent on the field is not there to defeat you. Your opponent on the field is there to get the best out of you. So when you charge into the world and and we're doing away with this failure mindset, do away with the enemy mindset at the same time, because that thing that you currently think of as the enemy, whether that is your competitor in the marketplace or your competitor on the sports field, they are there to help you be your best, to challenge you to bring your A game every time. And I love that, right?
I love
Because
that.
you
Yeah.
go from a place of fear to a place of fearlessness. You go from a place of, like dire risk to welcoming risk. Like I want to get into the arena
Right.
to dance with that partner and see how great I can be and how great I can help him or her be, right? Like, let's push the envelope here. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah. I
Net
love it.
is everything.
To me, that speaks to that comparison to gratitude because I get to switch being in that competition to, wow, thank you for helping me to grow and be better.
I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast before, but I have been just humming on this kind of framework that really, I think, defines my own kind of approach and the approach I want to use in the classroom. And so, like I said, I may have said it before, but grit, grace, gratitude, and empowering greatness. And that grit is that willingness to get into the arena. You mentioned grace, and now you just mentioned gratitude, right? Like those are so fundamental to not only your own ability to adapt and overcome and persevere and be resilient, which is the grit piece, but also to empowering greatness in yourself and in other people.
That's right.
It is just, we're lucky to be able to step into the arena.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So as we wrap up here today, Hugo, I just want to say thank you for a challenging and wonderful conversation on this because I know that both of us see learning opportunities as so critical for our continued journeys, right? And the goal is, how can we help lift others to not stay stuck when things don't work?
Role in the world, right?
Yeah.
And when we meet them and they are stuck, we give them the grace to persevere and to move forward, and we try to lift them up. That's so true.
That is it. So for our viewers and our listeners, here's your challenge. Where is one area in your life where you can reframe, quote, failure into a learning opportunity that makes you better today? Hope you all have a great one. Thanks, Hugo.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Ripple Effect Leadership Podcast. If this episode sparked an insight or reminded you of someone, please share it and help forward the ripple. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review so more leaders can find their way here. You can find us on LinkedIn at Jen Brown-Coach and at HF Rodriguez Jr. and more leadership content and coaching tools at journeyofgracecoaching.com. A quick heads up before you go. This podcast and all content shared by Ripple Effect Leadership is for informational and educational purposes only. The opinions and characterizations in this podcast are our own and do not necessarily represent the U.S. government. This podcast is not a substitute for mental health treatment or professional medical advice. If you are struggling, we encourage you to reach out to a licensed mental health provider or call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You don't have to do this alone.